Hey, y'all, welcome to In My Feels But I'll Heal podcast, where we sip some tea, talk about some tea, laugh through the chaos, and get real about mental health and healing. I'm Denise, your host, here to remind you that it's okay to feel all the feels. And it's even better when we get to heal through them together. Let's take a deep breath, vibe out, and dive in.
Well, I'm Jarvis Johnson. I kind of started my world of, everything that I do, it's centered around mental health. Actually, my very first job, I worked at Bayland Center for Mental Rehabilitation.
Wow.
And I was 16 years old, and I was the recreational coordinator, ironically. And so I've always been interested and certainly wanted to help, those that couldn't help themselves and just needed an opportunity. And so working at Bayland Center, I did that in the summertime. And my first two jobs, my first two summers.
And what kind of populations were you seeing at
So
the time?
they lived in the facility. A lot of them had severe mental illness, so they lived in the facility. And but when I used to go, because my mother, Cleo Glenn Johnson, she was a member of the board. And so I used to always go around every time I go to the board meetings. I'm 14 years old. I'm like, oh my God, I got to sit in another meeting. And so I'm sitting in these meetings, but then it started clicking because I'm going there every day, or every whatever weekend or whatever, and realize there's not enough activity going on. They just walk around smoking cigarettes all day. And so I actually made a pitch to.
So you started
I
the program.
I actually made a pitch to the owner. Or the director of the program and said, look, we need to have programs for them. We need to have, get out and do some recreation, do some stretching, do some calisthenics, just do something, right? And so it was like, I like that idea. So I just put together a program and, every day we'd morning and lunch, and then in the afternoon we'd have some kind of activity,
And you've been exposed to this at a very young age, and I guess you've seen kind of the development of like mental health throughout the years and now in different phases of your life. How are you seeing it show up now?
Well, it's all the same. I think obviously with the day and age of, technology and social media, I think it gets out there a lot more. But I think nothing changed. Nothing has changed. We would think new medicines or new techniques, but I think at the end of the day, we still haven't addressed the root cause of much of the mental illness that afflicts people. PTSD is real, and PTSD is not just military. It's a lot of things, and so we have to make sure that we address those. And then certainly when you look at the jails and how many people are in jail that just have mental issues. They're not criminals. They lashed out or they, acted out, but, we're using jails as a holding site because we don't put enough money into rehabilitation for mental illness. We don't do enough of that. We don't do enough intervention.
And we're definitely dealing with the mental health crisis itself. And as a counselor and a therapist, now it is that accessibility just kind of sometimes feels out of reach. And then I was thinking about this as we were coming up to our interview, how many of those calls that go to 911 are crisis intervention. But is the team that we really have out there supported, trained to deal with mental health crises, and how many people are being incarcerated for things that really needed to be like a mental health intervention?
No, they're not trained at all. Police are trained to protect and serve. They're trained with a certain mentality of listen, and a lot of the same mentality that they bring are triggers for the people that they're supposed to be, coming to support when you call 911. I distinctively remember a case when I was on city council where an individual family called the police because he wanted to harm himself. And when the police came, he locked himself in the bathroom. They knocked on the door, he didn't open, they kicked the door in, he slammed the door, they kicked the door in, he slammed the door, they kicked the door in again, and he slammed the door, but this time they were able to get in, and he had a knife in his hand, and long story short, they ended up killing him.
Yeah.
He wasn't trying to harm anyone but himself. And he didn't need police officers yelling at him and telling him to do this and do that and drop the knife. He literally was wanting to do something to himself. And so I think with a different training, a different, a mentality, we can help people. And this is not defunding the police. I want to be clear about that. When people, we need to, no, we're not going to defund police. I don't want to hear none of that. I don't want nobody to come and say Jarvis wants to defund the police. Nobody wants to defund the police. I want to add a layer to that.
I'm even thinking about that. Like, what are the most strategic ways that we can allow people to continue learning as they are part of these careers? Just like I have to sustain my licensing and continue to do continuous educational courses, and ethics is part of that. Like, what if there was continuous education, and hence mental health is part of that too?
Right. I think that's important, because I don't want police officers to be mental health officers. I want them to be trained to identify what a mental health crisis looks like. And then from there, they then make the call, okay, this is not a job for me. This is a job for, a mental therapist. Can we bring that therapist here? Let's get on the phone to make a call. We want to secure and make sure everybody around is safe. But beyond that, because it's almost like I don't want teachers to be the patrol of the school. I want teachers to teach. So I don't want to add guns to teachers, hips, because they're going to patrol. No. We got police officers for that. So I think we have to look at making sure that we have different layers, but we have to make sure that we're putting the money in place so that there can be therapists in place, so that when things occur, that they know how to address them and call them. But it's incumbent upon the state, the city, and the federal government to then see how we may be able to put money into hospitals that will be able to house these individuals for an extended period of time in order to get them.
Because there's layers.
Get them settled,
And people don't get to understand that there's different layers to mental health. And when a person comes and sees us, we're actually the first level.
Right.
You come and talk to a mental health therapist, you tell them something's going on with your life, and we identify, this person needs crisis management, and maybe that's even more intense than just a regular once a week visit or once every other week. It's like, okay, you need to go to intensive care. Maybe you need to be there for a couple weeks, or maybe you need a different level of care. Now we go to like the stage 3. Now you need to be like hospitalized for months. And so people just don't know how to navigate this system. But I always like to give the resource of like 988. Like, if you just don't know where to start and you are in crisis in that moment, there's a lot of organizations that have the support lines for crisis management.
That's good. 988 is something that a lot of people are not going to know about, and I think that's important. We know about 311, we know about 911. So there are other avenues, but I think what happens is what you just pointed out. Giving them that first introduction kind of lets them know it's okay, because oftentimes it can be intimidating, and they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And so if you give them that first layer, then it's like, okay, is this how this works? Okay, now I see help, I can get help. But oftentimes, again, they're having mental health issues. They may not even know how to, handle that. So it's the support system. It's those of us who know. It's those of us who've been there. So.
And you're mentioning something important too that you said earlier. Whenever we meet a person that's in distress, but we don't know what to do with that person that's in distress. And it's easy for us to dysregulate. Like, if I come at you strongly and you're like, oh, well, hold up, like, what's going on? There's no co-regulation, but knowing, okay, this person is in need, they're going to be dysregulated. I need to be let me lower my tone. My approach needs to be different. And that's how de-escalation tends to happen.
Right.
So maybe there's like a skill deficit for like the de-escalation part.
There's definitely
There
a
is.
deficit in that arena. Obviously, being 15, 16 years old and working with mental health patients and doing calisthenics and activities that they don't want to do, I often ran into, I'm not doing this, and they would just go off. And so was it my job to, no, you're going to do this, we're going to, and then if I met their level of anxiety, that ain't going to do nothing but increase the anxiety. So you have to learn, and see, for somebody like me, it's common sense. I'm like, it's just common sense. You see somebody in distress, you just don't yell at them. You don't, And that's even with the police now. I mean, I'm not in distress, or I don't have mental health issues out loud.
Right.
We all got them, but
No, right,
but I don't, if I'm ever pulled over by the police, I don't want, show me your hands. I'm like, why do you think yelling at me is going to make me respond to you in a manner that's oh my God, he yelled at me. I can yell at my children. My children look at me like.
And we have to think about what that does, like, in your body, in your brain. So if I yell at you, we're talking about the flight, freeze, shock response. Some people will flee. Some people will stand there paralyzed. Talk to me. I can't, I'm in shock. I can't breathe. And so they immediately go into anxiety.
Right.
And so you have to think about, like, people tend to react in different ways due to these strong approaches, and you won't get the best interaction out of those individuals.
Exactly right. You hit the
And that's just a timestamp, because it's not like you know them, but that's the one little timestamp, and now you're getting sent off somewhere.
Right. And we have to stop with it. And again, police officers have a tough job. I'm not here to say it, they don't, but at the end of the day, you chose this job. And so you have to choose to do this tough job, and you have to do it to the best of your ability. And so, everyone cannot be the suspect. And if you're thinking everyone is bad, then you cannot blame everyone for thinking every police officer is bad. So after everything that I've seen on television, everything that I've read, everything I see on social media, when I'm seeing these officers, I'm being fed this information, I'm going to think you're bad.
Yeah.
And then you're going to come at me and you're going to think I'm bad. And so where do we ever meet
in between?
And have a dialogue or a conversation? Because if he's, that officer's going to get turned up, then obviously this individual is going to meet that level of energy.
And you're talking about kind of like the information that we allow to funnel through. If all I'm watching is negativity, or all I'm watching is that people are the suspect, or that police are the bad guys, and that's all I will confirm to believe. I confirm my own bias through doing that process. And it's a very dangerous game to play whenever you're dealing with real people.
Right.
You're dealing with real mental health issues. So how do we move forward in this day and age?
I think empathy is the most important element that any individual professional can have when they're wanting to help. That's elected officials. That's the mental health industry. That's doctors, physical and mental. That's, in any job, you have to have empathy if you want to serve people. I think empathy is lost because people simply want everyone to have a life that they are accustomed to. Well, I think it's important that elected officials have that empathy. You have to feel what your constituents feel. You have to understand where they're coming from in order to legislate properly. Because oftentimes when I hear politicians say, the homeless just need to go get a job. Jesus Christ, man, I'm like, come on.
There's only one barrier.
Just go get a job. Like,
we have to address all these other needs.
The world has dumped on this individual. The world has told this individual that they're worthless. The world has done all of these things to them, and now you just tell them to pull themselves up by the book. But that when they go to the job, or when they try to do the interview, they don't have the right proper clothes. They don't have the proper hygiene. They don't have the things that they necessarily need to go just get a job. So you just can't expect everyone to have it. So there are different levels to it. So again, empathy is important, because if you understand and you go, okay, we need to assist, help, do certain things. So that's why I always say empathy is so very important. And I think once you get to that part, I understand mental health. Again, Bayland Center for Mental Rehabilitation. Then when I turned 19, I started working for MHMRA, and working at third floor forensics at 401 Franklin,
Wow.
And so this world has been a part of who I am, and I truly understand it. And that's why whenever I legislate, I always legislate to make sure that we're adding more dollars for mental health. We're adding, the different layers that you're talking about. We're talking about training additionally, so that these officers understand you don't need to incarcerate. You don't need to escalate. You need to learn the skills of de-escalation. You need to learn when somebody is in crisis so that you can make the call. So all of those things have to be in place, and if we want to have that type of synergy to create a a healthy environment by which everyone can live.
And you're talking also kind of the levels of care just for people, for beings, for self-actualization. So what we know about Maslow's hierarchy needs, the first thing we need is food, shelter, safety. And so how do we get to this place where we can really start working on our mental health or make sure we even get to a job? Does this person have food? Does this person have clothing? Taking care of their hygiene? All of these tend to affect people, but it's the resource gathering. And sometimes there's a lack of knowing where to go to these individuals, but there tends to be a lot of wraparound services, so social workers. And sometimes maybe it's also the stigma, like, I don't want to work with a social worker. What if they take away my kid? Or what if they take away? But no, it's like we need to kind of relearn that these support services are here and how they can support us. Because sometimes they go unused, unfunded, or mistreated, or get taken away. But
the irony of what you just said is I wrote a bill in my first term as a state representative that said that every police officer, when they come into the force, they have to take a mental test. They have to take a mental health test. Where do you stand mentally? How are you? You do that test when you first get there to make sure that you're good. That's it.
Mm-hmm. That's just like your entry.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Like, you've been on the job 10 years, and now how much death have you seen? How many times have you been told that you ain't you're a horrible individual? How many times have you been dumped on? How many times have you gone home and taken your job home, and then you had to deal with the stresses of home? We deal with that all the time, and ironically, I was talking about we need to help these police officers, and everybody was like, And so the stigma that a lot of officers were saying to me, the lobby and everybody else was, well, they're afraid of losing their job. If they say something wrong, they'll think that it's like, no, we just want to know where you stand. And a lot of police officers were thinking, well, you're going to make 50% of small towns lose their force because you're writing this bill. I'm like, but if we can identify somebody that's going through mental crisis, then we need to do that. That same year, we spent $23 million buying bulletproof vests. And I said, we literally just spent $23 million to protect their chest, but we spent no money to protect their head. And then I asked a simple question. How many police officers die in the line of duty feloniously? Somebody actually killing, not heart attacks, not car crashes, not any of that, but somebody stabbing, shooting, or any of those things. I'll ask you, do you know?
No.
In the entire country, how many how many police officers die in the line of duty? You would think, every time I ask the question, everybody, if you're thinking how many police officers in the country, what?
Well, literally wake up with like news that something has
every
happened
day.
In the line of work every day.
So I get all these numbers, 10,000 die annually. I'm like, no, 116 on average die in the line of duty. One is too many, I get it. And then I asked the second question, how many police officers commit suicide annually?
It's even higher. There was recently in the news.
It's 3 times higher.
In one department where they had 3 officers that died back to back to back due to suicide.
Exactly. So if, in fact, more officers are taking their own life than are the criminals, there is another issue that we must deal with. Because if we're able to help this officer where he or she sits and works, then we need to make sure that's okay. Because then the offset of that is their job. They can do their job better. They don't bring the stresses of life to their job, and then they're going and taking all their frustrations out on this individual that they have already assumed as a criminal. So we have to make sure that we continue to try to put money into this. And the only reason I was able to do it is because I know the world, because I understand it, because I've lived it. I've been a part of the mental health industry, and so I do understand this is what this community needs. And so I think, again, in order to be effective, you have to have empathy, and you have to have some kind of knowledge, or have, somebody in close proximics to you that have had to go through this.
Even in the starting programs that you did when you were younger, the calisthenics, the recreational activities, those are kind of the building blocks to mental well-being. Like, are we moving your body? Are we exercising your mind? Are we mentally putting ourselves in a different space where it's just not surrounded by the overwhelmingness of work, the overwhelmingness of life experiences. So even small building blocks can make a difference, but it's like, are we intentionally placing these blocks in our road so we're like, oh, hold on, like, let me participate in it. And sometimes it's like we're just not in the realm of these activities, but they're there.
And then more the times you're doing, and more times you're doing these activities, the more they're seeing it. Because there were, a couple of the guys were like, I ain't doing that. And they go smoke the cigarettes. But then they started realizing everybody else was doing it. They was sitting off by themselves, and then I'll try it. I'll try it. And so, and of course I started rewarding those that would come and participate. Well, where's mine? I was like, you gotta participate, Well, I ain't gonna participate in that. You still need to give me. I was like, yeah, well, not working like that. But they then joined. And so when they joined, and then, again, just like you said, get the blood pumping, they smoke cigarettes all day. You try to get some good breathing going on. You can physically heal your body. You start working on mentally healing your mind.
And there's so many facets. You mentioned kind of like the substance use part of it. Nutrition goes into it. The exercise goes into it. Like, it's just a myriad of like things that go into that. But also it's like some of it's our genetic makeup. And sometimes we don't even have the health resources to know, am I dealing with a predisposition condition that I didn't even know, but maybe my mama did have ADHD, or maybe this is also chronic due stress generational traumas that's now I'm having to deal with. And there is new stats coming out saying that millennials are the one generation that's learning how to heal itself more than any other generation. And so we're also like in a sweet spot where it's like other people are saying, oh, this is working for you. Going to therapy, like, it's working for you. So people are just now like, oh, I guess I'll try it too. So we're seeing it.
I think we started really saying it was okay to go to therapy during COVID. I think that's when I really started seeing more and more people started talking about it, because during COVID, one of the things that I saw was a lot of boys kind of go into their own shell. And I'll give you a story, because I remember as a young boy, I was always told, don't show that. You can't show weakness. You can't show emotion. You can't cry. You get hurt physically or emotionally. You can't. And so I was always taught, can't cry. Even when the little girl broke my heart, I couldn't go to my uncles or go to anybody and say, she broke my heart. Be like, boy, what you crying about a girl for? There's so many other girls out there. But then you start masking, because, I don't want to feel that again. So I'm gonna then put this armor up. I'm gonna put this barbed wire around my heart. I'm gonna stop caring. And then you go through all these other relationships throughout your lifetime, and you put this barbed wire around your heart, and so you've never let anybody in. And then that's why you see so many men lash out, because they were never able to talk it out. And so I think that's always so important. And speaking of ADHD, so I used to run an after-school program called Phoenix Outreach Youth Center. When I was 21 years old, I was a student at Texas Southern, and a lot of the kids, a lot of my children, 90% of them were on some kind of psychotropic, some kind of meds, right? At that time, it was the crazy pill. They get the crazy check, and so you started seeing, and I would ask the parent, because the kid would come to me and they would tell me how bad he was at school, but he would come to the center. I'm like, he ain't bad. Like, this is not a bad kid. So I started asking the parent, what did he eat for breakfast? He don't want to eat breakfast. He ate a honey bun and drank a Coke. Okay, well, pew,
You're spiking up their levels.
Like, he's up here when he gets to school. And then by the time lunchtime comes, he done crashed. But then he didn't sugar it up again at lunch.
So by the time you get him at home.
And then, by the time he got to me, he was on his way down, but then I wouldn't sugar him up. He would have to, we would serve meals to the kids, but they were eating vegetables, they were eating protein, and, we wasn't giving Kool-Aid, they were drinking water, and so we wasn't sugaring them up. So you started realizing, and that's when we started getting into, our community gardens and eating more fresh fruits and vegetables and teaching the children and the parents.
Yeah, and we're seeing like surrounding school districts banning out like snacks that are like specific dyes, sugar drinks, and things of those sorts.
That's right.
But it's like, how is it affecting them at school? And you're seeing different versions of them depending on what time you're getting the student in your classroom.
That's right. That's right. So you just have to make sure it's everything that we do in life is all interconnected, and so we have to make sure that we that we understand what we do at home is going to affect at school. What we do at school is going to, so it's all there. So you just got to make sure that we're addressing it. And and that's working with children, myself, 21 years old, I'm still practically a child myself, I don't have no kids, I'm not married. But I know from whence I've come, and I've had a lot of training, and so I just wanted to pass on to them what was given to me, and so to the very best of my knowledge. And we refined it and redefined it along the way.
We learn over time.
Yeah.
And it's definitely great to be a participant of kind of mental well-being and advocacy at this time and age, post-COVID. People going through that isolation, the deepening of depression and anxiety, and then having to come back and be like, okay, socialize, act like nothing happened. Right. And I was in the school system around that time, so I got to see all the kids come back after COVID. It was a difficult time for admin, for students, the time management, the socializing, the getting ready and not distracted to curriculum. It was a very difficult transition.
For everyone. It was. And so that's why we were trying to set up satellite, facilities where we could set the therapists up, the therapists could come, and the parents would bring the kids, and we'd have just chat sessions, man. Let's just chat it out, if nothing else, And it was a rough go in the beginning, but we did see some effective changes.
So tell me, so we might not all be therapists, we might not all be police officers right now, but maybe we're just that one person seeing somebody kind of struggling or needing that extra hand. What do you suggest for that person?
It's an interesting question. If you see someone, you're asking what should they do?
Yeah, what should they do?
I mean, if you're a family member and you see somebody in crisis, obviously I think the first thing, again, is to have that empathy, to understand, not pass judgment, not to simply point the finger and say, he like that because his daddy was like that, or he's like that because, I think that's the wrong thing in the world to do. I think you have to understand what environment played in this person's life that created this type of mentality. And I always used to say, children will be what they see. And unfortunately, a lot of times children are looking at television, and oftentimes when you see black boys and girls are looking at an image on television, Latinos are looking at an image on television that oftentimes is not healthy, likable, or it's just, it's oftentimes, it gives the struggles of life. Every time I cut on the television, I'm seeing the struggles of life. I'm like, good Lord, there are so many other stories to be told
and
that says that they can see and go, life ain't that bad. But every time you see death, you see guns, you see violence, you see drugs, you see prostitution, like, good. Our community is bigger than that. Stop using our trauma for your entertainment. That's all they're doing. They continue to use the Latino and the black trauma as, so when you're looking at the stereotypes are always going to be, if I ask anybody, you line them up, what's the stereotype of blacks? They're going, craziest thing in the world. What's the stereotype of Latinos? Craziest thing in the world. Stereotype of whites. It was like, something positive. I'm like, wait, what? Where'd you get
and then
that?
many times we get a positive story out of the bunch where we're constantly highlighting certain demographic ethics of racial profiling. That's what it is. Right. It's hard because I'm a child. I'm watching the TV, but all I see is that my people are criminals.
That's right.
Or that my people are having crises. But where's the one that achieved? Where's the one that surpassed? Exactly. Like, me watching that is aspirational to me. Exactly. I want to become that.
Exactly.
And I think that's why I even have this platform for people to see like-minded, small little Latina girl,
That's right.
Latina woman trying to make something for herself. Even though I came from those communities.
Right.
I didn't come from the best communities.
Exactly.
I had to face mental health disparities in my own community. And I had to reteach my whole family, like, hey, we can't really talk about this.
Right, exactly.
I had to, you have to be defiant towards the structures and the systems that we were born in.
Sometimes we have to change, kind of what traditions that we had as family members to really reach, because it was when my uncles used to see me, they would always tease me, kind of, you got a girlfriend, you've been and, and so then when I became older and then they had kids, it was like, you got a girlfriend, you do. Hey man, don't talk to my son like that. It's like, oh, you learned. It wasn't good for you to talk to me like that, but so I can't, and I shouldn't talk to your son like that. So we break these generational curses that oftentimes plague our family, subsections. So we have to do certainly much better in doing that. So again, I think going back to your question, it's really about having that empathy. They always say, it takes a village to raise a child, but I always tell them you got to check the village sometimes because this village can be messed up, And
I'm like, do I really want my aunt to be the one raising this kid?
I don't need that village. I don't need that village raising this child. So you got to change the mentality. But I think it again is breaking the cycle. It's really changing the dynamics of what children see on television and how they equate that to look like themselves. And that's why you see Republicans and Donald Trump and all of his group. And I apologize for making it political, but what they're doing is they're wanting to erase certain aspects of history so that kids don't see themselves in a positive fashion. That they don't, they can't see the hate and the horrible things that America did to its own citizens. And so that's why they want to,
and honestly,
we don't want that. We don't want that. We only want you to talk about good stuff when it comes to, you're like, it ain't all been good. But again, it's the same thing that I'm saying about seeing, kids seeing themselves on television. Because those stereotypes are real. Because when you think about a young black boy walking down the street that just don't look the part, and cops are gonna automatically, yo, let me see your hands. The white kid across the street, they ain't saying nothing to him, but he got a whole gun underneath his, jacket, and they're the ones shooting up the schools, shooting up the churches, the synagogues, and doing all these other things. But we don't pay attention to that because we've allowed that television and the social media and kind of the stereotypes to dictate, that's good, this is bad.
Those are televisions, but we really become the cameras out in the public. We're the ones televising and just wanting to focus on certain aspects of our social interactions.
Yeah, that's it.
The mental health crisis is a large one, and it's not one that just one person has to tackle, but it's multifaceted. Everybody has to tackle it from different angles. Many different community workers, participants, politicians all play some type of way into how do we better this system for ourselves, but really starts kind of with you. Like, where are you? Do you need help? Do you need support? How do we get to a point to de-escalate ourselves as well with the community resources we have? Or can I seek, do I ask? And now we're at such an advantage too with artificial intelligence. I'm not saying use it as your therapist, because you shouldn't, because you can take yourself through a psychosis, but I would say use it to find your community resources. Like, hey, I'm having a mental health crisis. Where can I go? And I will tell you, I'll pull you up a list of like 10 places in your surrounding zip code, area, phone number, addresses where you can seek medical attention. And so it's like, let's use these things really to now benefit us.
And everyone on television has to be, those people that we look up to, the celebrities, what they don't tell you is how many times they're in therapy a week, how many times they go. So I think when you normalize it, that people will feel more comfortable doing it. And I think this is where we are in America today, is that we're normalizing therapy. That's why it's so hard to even find a therapist. Like, can I get in? No, I'll see you in about 3.5 weeks. Like, what?
Well, come on in, I have availability.
You got so many different, but so I think that's why it's important that we have to normalize it. But how do we, I don't want to chase my tail all the time,
right?
But I don't think there is a formula that we can use that says this is the way that you help break that cycle. But and I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's about how you eat, what you put in your body affects your mind. I can't take sugar in the morning. Like, if I eat a donut in the morning, it literally does the opposite of what it would normally do to somebody else. It makes me sluggish. Mental fog is so, and then I realize once I have that mental fog and I'm like, oh my God, everybody's getting on my nerves. Everybody, and so I'm snappy. I'm not productive, and and somebody just gonna upset me, and I'm gonna just. So that's why I have to be cognizant of not to eat certain things in the morning. I don't drink. I don't. No sugary foods, no sugary drinks. I just can't because
Yeah.
I understand what my day is gonna be like.
And you've had to learn your patterns, your rhythms, the
Yeah.
way you function.
And I'm kind of cuckoo because I still end up doing it.
Hey, sometimes we
I'm
forget. We in the moment.
that donut look good, man. I ain't ate nothing. I'm kind of hungry, but that's all they got. I'm like, oh my God. So, but yeah, you have to be disciplined enough. But how many people, have the luxury of
Yeah.
being disciplined enough to not eat what's in front of them when we do know that there's so many people who that donut probably is the only food that they're going to get.
Yeah.
So they don't have the luxury of having that, the
And it's
healthy
interesting.
food.
I've been to kind of different parts of town, and I remember going to a General Dollar, pretty much the General Dollar, and people are using those stores for the groceries, like buying the pre-frozen meals, a bag of chips, cereal, and like just loading up on like deli meat that was like there, but
Yeah.
there was no vegetables, there was no fruits, there is no education, even like how do I cook for myself from even scratch meals. So sometimes it's like the education, no gaps even for nutrition.
The Dollar Trees and the dollar stores. Oftentimes, when times are hard, that's what you got to
That's where
go.
we gotta
And
go.
oftentimes, yeah, you're right. When you go in there and you go in and you look at the label, you be like, what in the world? How much sugar is in a can of beans? Like, why is there sugar in
Like
beans?
sugar in the beans.
But
That's why it
yeah,
tastes so good.
but so yeah, I mean that being not having those resources and not is that luxury that oftentimes you don't have that leads people down the wrong path. So, but there's so many different things that can be done, need to be done, but we can spend a lot more of our energy, we can spend a lot more of our resources in the preventive areas so that we don't have to worry about it later. Because I used to operate and do the DARE program. And so I created the DARE Plus program, which is DARE would teach you about drugs and alcohol and say no to drugs. Well, yeah, I came up with the concept of if we tell them to say no to drugs, then what are they saying yes to? And so I created this program to where we would do after school clubs. So you have to give, those other areas of doing things to help occupy that mind, to build the skills, to build the character, to build the things that you need in order to be successful. So, but
Yeah.
it's just difficult.
And you're saying this like, if am I going to say no to this, then what is my alternative?
Yep.
You just can't say no, shut it down. It's like, okay, well, we have somewhere else to go.
Fill that
We
gap.
have a different option.
Got to
It's
fill
filling
that
the
gap.
gap.
If I don't fill that void, like, okay, I said no. Where's the reward in that? Like, what? How do I feel good about that? I mean, we're still human.
Yeah.
We still like our vices sometimes. So you have to, but you feel that with something else when you know.
And you're able to learn, you're able to retrain your mind away from these habits, whether they've been the best or not the best coping mechanisms. You're able to retrain your body, but it comes through discipline
Right.
and pattern
Right.
and rhythm.
But it starts with building a foundation. And the reason why I brought the DARE Plus program up is because that's the preventive form of it. And so if you give these kids an opportunity to learn skills, showcase those skills, and then be proud of themselves, then you've built that one ingredient that I think every human needs in order to be successful. And that's just simply hope. If you build hope in this kid understands,
Yes.
wow, I can be something. There's a little hope in me. We all got hope. It's like, I hope everything. I hope this is a good day. But just, that the other kind of hope is just being hopeful to know that you can be anything you want. But we stop spending money in preventive programs because we want to put money into interventive programs. And so we're giving police officers all this money and we're putting more officers on the streets, and I'm going, now how many crimes did you stop? And again, I'm not knocking cops because you're talking bad about, no, but how many crimes do cops prevent? It's hard to kind of gauge that. because the only time that I
Be
ever
like, was I gonna go do it, but now I stopped because
Right.
somebody intervened.
but because I look at it and I go, every time I see a cop, he's coming to take the notes on the crime that's already been committed. So now you go spend your time trying to find the perpetrator that committed the crime, but the crime has already been committed. So that's why I say, let's find ways to have the preventive measure in place so you don't have to worry about trying to find the criminals.
And it takes one person to be that difference.
That's it.
There's plenty of studies that state, even in a world around individuals, people, environmental factors that have negatively impacted a person, it takes one person to lift that person up. And so we have seen it even on the positive highlighted media, where police officers that do engage in their community and the children in the community, they see the flourishing of that relationship, have better outcomes. It took one person, one interaction, maybe a continuous interaction to facilitate better outcomes.
That's why the DARE program was successful. That's why I thought it needed to continue, because you gave police officers an opportunity to have interaction with the kids that they normally would not have interaction with. You gave the kids an opportunity of having a positive interaction with a police officer that he normally would not have had a positive interaction with, and now they're seeing each other for who they truly are. And I've seen this work, because then if something happens and cop goes knocking on the door, what you want? What you want? And then the kid was like, oh, that's Officer Brown. You know him? Yeah, it's my DARE officer. Oh, okay. Now the attitude of the parent has completely changed. It went from what you doing at my door to, oh, okay, my kid like you, so what's up? What can I help you with? Now you have a positive interaction. So again, I won't go too much into police officers. People think I'm trying to talk bad about cops, and I'm not. I'm just simply talking about where the preventive measures come in place so that we can use that same model when it comes to, again, mental health. How do we use the preventive measures? Because constantly failing and constantly being fed negative images of yourself is what can exacerbate, the mental health challenges that we go through. But if we can kind of nip those in the bud early on, you don't have to worry about them. And again, there's no secret to it, but when you look at the world, you know what success looks like, and you know kind of what you can do. It's not guaranteed. If you're a believer in God, God has his hands on everything, right? But I have faith enough to know that my Father will guide me, show me the way, but I have to do the work. I can ask for the blessing, but I need to be able to receive that blessing but then work at it every single time. That's why they say faith without works. You got to you can have faith, but you still got to do the work. So that's really what.
He can only bless your plans if you're working on your plans.
There it is. There it is.
But what are some final remarks that you have for our audience in terms of what we've spoken today about mental health, kind of where we are now, some of the initiatives that you're taking forward?
Well, I think the message that I wanted to put out, that it's okay. It's okay to have that moment, but it's not okay to let that moment pass without you doing something about it. And we all go through it. Everybody has mental issues. There ain't gonna be not one person out here. The most successful people in the world, we call them extraordinary. They're just extraordinary, but extraordinary people are generally, you're a little weird, but at the end of the day, we've accepted their kind of eclectic ideas and they're just smart. Like, no, you're kind of crazy, but I know we ain't supposed to use that word, but no, but they're just extraordinary. We've accepted that. And so because we've accepted their behavior, they continue to thrive. We see someone talking to themselves and we go, and oh, wait a minute. You're like, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm just talking through it, and people always say, you talking to yourself? I'm like, yep.
I'm an external processor. There's a large population of people that externally process.
And people always say, well, just, you just don't answer yourself. I was like, well, that'd be dumb. Because if I'm talking to myself, I'm going to answer myself. I want to, you know how the old phrase goes, you talking to yourself, just don't. Nah, I want to. Please give me the answers. I want the answers too. So, but I do want people to know that it is okay. It's okay to seek the help. It's okay to have that, that outcry to say, I'm here and I need the support. For the generation before mine, I going to therapy was, kind of a no-no, right? Taboo. Ooh, you don't want to do that. Just go to God, baby. Just go to God. It was like, again, I'm gonna go to God. I'm gonna pray, but God gonna say, now go see your therapist.
Yeah. Even God said the wise counsel.
Right on.
I'm like, don't let me bring it up.
Right? Please do. Please do. But those things are important. So, but we're going to continue to do the work. Part of my organization, we continue to have advocate, for the mental health. We have, we've established group homes that, we're giving young people and veterans the opportunity of having, housing the homeless and making sure that beyond that, giving them the therapy that they need, making sure that we bring our therapists in just to simply continue to work with them and talk to them as much as we possibly can. So we just, in our own little world, we can just do our little part. But I think it's important that we all find that synergy. And so that's why I'm so glad that you have this platform and that your audience, you have, an audience of, Hispanic audience, and they're able to hear, because we often, the message is a little more clear when you can identify with the person, because they think, again, you know where I come from, so I can listen to you, right? So I think when we start having that type of synergy and start working together, then we'll start making a bigger impact. There are too many, well, this is mine and I can do better than them, and how did they get that grant and I didn't get this grant, and and then you start talking.
I'm like, don't get stuck in it, y'all. Don't get stuck in it. We're all trying to make impact some way.
But it becomes a competitive environment, right?
It does.
And then everybody's competing with one another, and then, come see me. I was like, wait, you guys are talking. Y'all sound like lawyers now. You putting your commercials on and trying to get the Flyers commercial to get somebody to come, seek mental. That's not what it is, right? But I think we should, have this synergy where we can come together and bring these organizations together to have a defined plan. And I think once we create this defined plan, that we can send that clear message to our different levels of government to say, fund this, right? So, when I move on to Congress, I want to be able to take that plan and say, we need to fund this. And again, as I'm speaking, I never say I'm the foremost expert, but I would happen to believe that in Congress, we ain't gonna be a whole lot of mental health therapists, right?
Yeah.
Or who worked in this environment would have the type of knowledge that I would have. So I want to be able to take that and go and see, here's the knowledge, here's the information, because I've worked with, people like Ms. Morales that have been able to give me this data and give me this information, and here are the statistics, and here is how it's going to impact you, So
you're kind of talking also about the process of, if I want to advocate for this, how do I go about that? Who do I talk to? Who do I tell about it? And sometimes it is a call to the members.
Yeah.
Sometimes it does look like an email. Yeah. Sometimes it does look like supporting other organizations that are also in the advocacy work when it comes to like bills and structures and things that are just happening. But it's also supporting individuals like you. And so tell us, how can we follow up on you? Where do we find you? Where can we look out for you? Where are you?
Well, I'm running for Congress in the new 29th Congressional District. They redrew some lines. So people can go to my website at jarvisjohnsonforus.com, see all the work that I've done, in mental, in mental health and community organizing and business, the funding that I've given for education, vocational ed, all of those things. And on social media, I don't know what that stuff is. It's just Rep Jarvis Johnson, I think. But if you Google Jarvis Johnson, you'll find me.
We'll find
but my email information is info@jarvisjohnsonforus.com. And just kind of look and see the work that we're doing, because I want to take everything that I've learned, from my work in the community and take it to DC and show a different level of understanding and expertise that where we can get these things done. Because when you talk about picking up the phone and calling an elected official, again, the elected official is only as powerful as their knowledge. You can't, as an elected official, advocate for something if you don't have that tenacity and that level of understanding where you can articulate it in front of the body to say, this is why this is important. You know, we often listen to those that give that good, passionate speech about something, and you want to be a part of that. I think I bring that. I bring that level of passion and intellect when it comes to this topic, and so I will be, you know, the foremost advocate and just being as loud as I possibly can and screaming it at the top of my lungs that we have to address this, because we can no longer afford to have a mentally incapable president in the White House. I think that's what we got. And so I want to make sure that we do our very best to bring this level of understanding to our constituents that will make themselves feel comfortable knowing that there is an advocate like myself there. But again, coming up with that plan, taking it to DC and saying this is what we need, and these are the programs that need to be funded.
Thank you so much for your time, for being here with us and sharing the knowledge and also the experience that you carry throughout mental health. But thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure. But you know, I gotta mention my man Alvin Byrd, because it's
because of him. This is because of him.
It's because of him. But in all seriousness and honesty, you know, Alvin and I worked in that field a lot, and we worked together with, you know, women who were, you know, sex trafficked, you know, working with Kathy Griffin and trying to help her organization and working part of, you know, safe havens to make sure that, you know, so that was kind of, and Alvin we would always talk about how we can do better. And as a city council member, he was like, man, and you know, Alvin had that way of making you feel like you can do anything. It makes you think man, it can't be done unless you do it. You know, we're like, okay, Byrd, okay. And then we would literally set out and get it done, but it was literally because of him. Alvin would go out and he said, man, we need to do this.
He had a way to move the masses.
He did.
And change the hearts.
He had that energy. He definitely had the heart.
He definitely nurtured a lot of individuals. Sounds like yourself and even younger generations like myself. I'm happy and blessed that I got my time with Alvin.
You know, and Alvin, and he and I would talk about this a lot. He said, man, I don't regret none of the choices I made as a young person. And he would tell you about his drug life and all the other stuff that he went through. He said, because if I had not gone through that, I wouldn't be sitting here with you. I wouldn't be sitting here learning from you and teaching you. I wouldn't be here able to teach these kids. That's why, you know, Alvin lived his life every single day without a regret, but just simply saying, I love, you know, I don't like the things that I did, but it has given me a second chance to fix a lot of the brokenness that I created.
Yeah, this is true. I definitely just recall his phone calls. Denise, now you know I need some help. But it's definitely rewarding to be in the path amongst like-minded individuals who are making change in their communities and in themselves to be better to other people.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'll come back and get therapy later.
High five. Good job.